Hi guys, welcome to my first solo episode of Podmuse, which I have been saying I'm weirdly a little bit nervous for. I wanted to do a bit of a 101, how to launch a brand. I broke it into 9 very detailed steps, but I know a lot of our listeners and a lot of our community is very interested in how they would one day launch a brand, whether it's something you're interested in doing right now or whether it's something that you'd look into in the future. It's something that I've always spoke about, so I kind of wanted this to be my first episode. Obviously, I started Oddmuse back in 2020, and when I was thinking about these steps, I was really thinking about how relevant they are to someone launching a brand in 2025. And these are kind of like 9 steps that I feel are quite solid if you was to come back in a year's time and listen to this podcast. So my first step, which I have always said from the very beginning, is starting with a purpose. So everyone will tell you going into business, you 100% need a mission. I feel like in fashion, you need that now more than ever because people really want to understand who they're buying from, what they're buying. So our mission at the very beginning was the idea of investment fashion. I really recognise the gap in the market for a consumer that wasn't able to shop high luxury fashion, but wasn't satisfied with fast fashion. And leaving university, fast fashion was kind of all that was offered to us. There was kind of like this assumption that a woman of 22 years old that has maybe only just gone into the career world and is maybe on more of an entry level salary, that she would just not want to spend a lot of money on clothes. But then the idea of fast fashion kind of promotes overconsumption, and without thinking, all of a sudden you are buying constantly and spending the same amount of money you would if you're having to buy an outfit every single weekend. So I really felt like I was onto something and I'd recognised a purpose. And with that purpose, it has to be a gap in the market also. So you have to be coming into the business world with a problem that you've identified, but your business and your mission is almost offering a solution. So I really felt Oddmuse was offering that solution, and your purpose is what you start with because it has to be relevant to your whole journey. So we're always going back to, is she going to want to wear this? Is this timeless? Can the quality keep? And I think that's really important. So don't move on, I would say, until you have figured out this first step, because it's going to be really important when we work our way through the steps when you're designing product and when you're deciding a manufacturer and when you're marketing your brand. It all comes back to your purpose. So this is the most important step. And this first step initially was something that I sat with for around a year. I sat with this mission for around a year and I didn't quite have the name Oddmuse yet, but I sat with my purpose for a long time. I had a long time to think about how the product and the marketing would relate back to this purpose. So step 1, start with your purpose. You're not building a brand to just have a business. I always say, don't start a brand to start a business. Always do it to start a brand with a purpose. So that is step 1, and you need to spend a lot of time with that. Step 2, I have called it market gap and validation. So this is really diving into your purpose and recognizing, is this just a problem for you or is this a market-wide problem? Now, I really felt this way about Oddmuse, but I feel like you really have to sit with the idea for a little bit and decide, is this a problem that everyone else is experiencing? Is this a personal problem? How can I really explain this? What are people buying? What's missing in the market? Who are your competitors? So at the time when I was figuring out who Oddmuse's competitors were, I really kind of struggled. And that's when I saw a gap in the market, like who else is doing what you're doing? And if you can't find that competitor, it's important to understand where else is your customer right now shopping. So I basically come to the idea that there was a few brands in the space where my customers were shopping, but they weren't quite hitting the mission that I wanted to come to market with. So I think that's super important. Other ways in which you can do market gap validation is focus groups. We actually haven't done this at Oddmuse, but this is something that I'd love to start rolling out, where you basically invite a group of customers down, ask them questions that are in your age range. And ultimately, this step is basically identifying if there is a large enough audience for what you want to bring to market. The next step is naming and branding. So everyone loves Oddmuse, everyone loves that name. And the reason why I love this name is because it was unique enough. It wasn't something that someone would Google and loads of different things would come up. I thought it was great for SEO. But the way in which Odd Muse, I mean, everyone asked me why I named Odd Muse Odd Muse. So I'm going to try and explain it in a really polished way, but I always get a bit fluffy with it. But the idea of Odd Muse it was inspired by consumers in such a fast fashion influencer-led world. So I kept with this idea of my customers being my muse. I kind of just wanted like a really tiny small word to go in front of it. And I landed on odd because I just felt what I was doing was challenging the fast fashion industry. I was inspired by customers rather than celebrities, influencers. So I kind of landed on Odd Muse. But the name very much supported what we was trying to do, and I think that's important as well. And the name, again, like we've spoke about how, you know, you can need to sit with your purpose for a long while. I do feel like you need to think about your name for a long while. Now, your purpose has to be planned out from the very beginning before you move on to a step. But Odd Muse had a lot of new names, as I've mentioned in another podcast, but Odd Muse had a few names as I was working my way through this. So don't put loads of pressure on yourself to not move on until you have a name, but definitely just have it in the back of your mind and make sure that by the time you go to market, it's a good name that really links to what you're trying to do. Another tip for naming is just the simple one: is the domain available? Is it easy to Google? Is it easy to understand? So I think for Odd Muse's first name, originally as I was working my way through this, was This Style Is Mine, which I don't love that name at all. But when I was Googling it, I knew it wasn't going to be a standout Google search. This style is mine. It was never going to work. Loads of blogs were coming up, loads of different things were coming up, and it just didn't stand on its own. So yeah, I sat with the idea for a long time, and I think it's very important for your name to require a lot of thought. Number 4, and this is very important, and honestly, this took me around 2 years to get my head around, but if you can crack this at the very beginning, you are in for a much easier journey, and that is number 4, and that is timing your launches. The first 2 years of Odd Muse was chasing my tail to get the new collection done. So I basically launched Odd Muse with these blazers that done really well. But when I launched, I didn't have any other products in the pipeline. I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know if I was expecting to just sell these same blazers for a whole year and not have any newness in. But I think that's where I really went wrong. And it took me a solid 2 years to really understand the timing of launching. So in terms of when it is the best time to launch a brand, I launched Odd Muse in September, and that is a really good time because you're approaching Q4 at this point. So this is the biggest shopping time of the year. It's a great time where consumers try new things. Other to that, I would be looking at an April to May launch because summer season has that same effect. So it's a time where people have loads of events and holidays coming up. They might be this is mainly for fashion, but they might be switching up their style a little bit. Again, that consumer wanting to try new things and discover new brands. So I think between them times, it's very important. I do think if you're looking at a Jan, Feb, March launch or a launch that's kind of too late into the Christmas party season, you will miss her. So I think timing is absolutely everything. But then, of course, the most important thing when timing your launch is just making sure that you are ready and you are proud of the product and seasonally it makes sense. Step 5 is a timeline breakdown. So you know when you want to launch. Now you need to kind of break down a bit of a critical path on how you are going to get there. Even when you do find your manufacturer, you're still looking at about 8 to 10 months for launch. So I think all in all, preparing yourself a whole year for a brand is really important. And I do think this is one of the reasons why people think Odd Muse is an overnight success, and we had success very early. I was genuinely planning this brand for years before we went to launch. And I think this is where some brands go wrong because they might decide that they want to launch a brand and they want to get the collection done and out. But there's so much before and after that to make sure you have such a good, well-rounded launch. So breaking it down is absolutely everything. You have your purpose. You've done all these steps before. I would say the next step really sits between you're designing your product and finding the right manufacturer, which we will get into. You've obviously got that product development, sampling, marketing prep. A lot of us just get to the end of creating this collection and want to take a breather, but marketing in itself is a whole other beast, especially in 2025. Obviously your photo shoot, your website, your packaging, there are so many details to this. So giving yourself a clear, critical path month by month, week by week of what you want to hear, especially if you're balancing this with a full-time job, which a lot of people in the planning stage of their brand are. So I think getting that timeline breakdown and setting yourself deadlines is very important. Before number 6, now number 6 is where we get into designing the collection and finding the right manufacturer. And manufacturing is a whole episode in itself, which I am committed to recording for you guys. But finding the right partner in what you are doing is so important, and finding where in the world you want to manufacture is very important. Without making the whole episode about this, Google is absolutely your best friend, and there's no shortcuts really in terms of having conversations with so many people and asking them so many questions about lead times and sampling costs and all these different things. As I said, that is definitely another episode, but my biggest advice right now would be taking your time to find the perfect partner. And a lot of that also comes down to just how you feel in their presence and how you feel speaking to them and how you can feel you're going to work with them. So yeah, once you found that partner, you can start sampling. Sampling is something that you want to be careful with because it is very expensive to sample. So you basically want a well-rounded collection designed before you go into sampling. Now, in terms of designing a collection, if I had my time again, I would probably look to work with a freelance designer on this, because I would have loved to have learned a bit more about designing and tech packs at that time, because now we use professional tech packs. I understand a lot of measurements. I understand a lot of fabrications. But 2020 Aimee did not understand that, and I think she should have leaned more on a freelance designer. And also you can work out your collections a little bit further ahead, so you're not going to be in a position like I was where I didn't plan the next drop. So I think start sketching on your iPad, but definitely try and work with a freelance designer if you're not a designer yourself. If you're not from a fashion background, that will really help. And make sure you're constantly asking yourself and your designer, does this reflect my mission? Because it is so easy to get caught up in all the new things that you're doing, and you can find it super exciting, and you can get a CAD designed and a tech pack made and just be super excited that it's done. But sometimes you can glaze over the fact that, is this actually something someone would want to buy, and does this support my mission? I have definitely done that with a few designs. You're definitely going to do that, but just try and avoid it, and just always just staying intentional with that design element. And that is step 6. Number 7, from sample to final product. So this is quite a beast of a section. This is the section where I would say you need to allow, oh my God, maybe like 10 weeks for this section, because we're also putting production in here, and your production is about 5 weeks. Let's add shipping here as well. Okay, you're looking at about 12 weeks for this part of the step. So this is a huge step. And I think what comes in this is getting your first samples, allowing a few weeks for maybe that first sample not to be right, and going through second stage, third stage of sampling, even 4 times. It's like your first time doing a brand. We tend to confirm the second to third sample always now, but there was definitely a time when we was kind of learning who Odd Muse is and the details in our product where it took a little bit longer. So do allow time for this. If you can go to your manufacturers and get it all done in that week, that's amazing. But if you do have to go kind of back and forth, it does add a lot of time. Once you have your final sample that you are happy with from a design point of view, so this is what we call design approvals, we then go into fits, and this is where you'll basically invite a garment tech and a fit model in to basically fit the samples on different sizes. Now, we have a garment tech come in and medium, large, extra large size models in, but it has not always been like this. There was definitely a time at the beginning of Odd Muse where I was getting friends to try on and inviting different sizes in my family to try on. So don't feel like you have to spend so much on a garment tech and get all these fit models in, because we honestly didn't start doing that until like year 3. But definitely make sure you are at least sense checking your sizes on other people in your family, in your friendship circle that are a different size to you. Once you're happy with that, and if there's no more revisions after you've sized it on other sizes, you can then go into production, which is normally around 4 to 5 weeks. And then you kind of go into quality checks. Now, this is a really important step that every founder at the beginning of their journey will get caught on. So I think it's really important to listen to this step. Before you ship your goods from wherever you're manufacturing in the world, make sure you order a size run from bulk production before the bulk ships, because that way you can identify any problems, you can do any spot checks before you pay to ship and import this stock. And I can't tell you how many times this has happened where an order's come and it's faulty and it could have just been avoided at the beginning, and it's been so much back and forth. It's been such a waste of time, it's been such a waste of money. So definitely order some pieces from your bulk production run to just check everything matches your samples. If we're doing pearls, for example, we're looking to see if the pearls are sewn on suit how we wanted them sewn on. They're the same color. If we're doing prints, we want to make sure the print is super clear and how we approve the samples. We had it last year when we tried out with a new manufacturer with our crystals. The samples were beautifully hand sewn on, and then our run from bulk production was glued terribly in all different places, and we couldn't launch that product until a lot later, but we caught it before it shipped. So I think quality control is a huge part. Your factory will do this for you, but make sure you're doing the checks yourself. Packaging development, this is another big thing that you maybe don't think about at the beginning, but that's really important. And then final approvals and delivery timeline. So when is that delivery going to get in stock? If you're sailing, you're probably going to get loads of different delays. There's loads of things that happen in the world in 30 days sailing, so that always becomes very delayed. If you are airing the stock in, you need to consider this as a cost, because airing stock in is a huge cost, so preparing yourself for that. But yeah, this is the biggest beast of a section and where your time is going to be the most needed. It's going to feel very operational in this step as well. Moving on to number 8, which I think is really important launching a brand, and that is the marketing prep. So when I got to the end of Odd Muse, I was so exhausted. I did not think about marketing at all. I was just so proud that I managed to design and create something, and I kind of just didn't know what the next step was. Now, a big part of my marketing journey at the very beginning was simply coming on socials and telling you all what I was doing. I was 22 years old, I was quitting my job at ASOS, and I was doing this, and I felt like I had a story. So I think it's important to, if you feel like you have a story, really explain that and explain to your customer why you're doing this. But I also think it's really important to have some money aside for marketing. So I always used to do 10% of what the collection was worth. This is like, I had loads of different metrics that kind of don't exist that I used to use at the beginning when I didn't really know what I was doing. So marketing wise, if I'd bought £50,000 worth of blazers, I would try and put at least £5,000 into marketing. Now that might not be achievable, but I think at the very beginning we was doing £5 ads every single day, and everyone always remembers Odd Muse for the boosted posts I was doing £5 a day. So I think it's very important to leave a budget for that. Building hype a little bit early is really important when you're launching a brand. You don't necessarily have to show the product too much, but you can definitely show your story, founder point of views, problem solving content. You can really kind of vlog the journey of launching a brand without revealing your product too soon. We are very careful on like when we show our audience a product, because 1, we don't want anyone to copy and we want that to be as tight as possible, but 2, we don't want the audience and the customers to get too fatigued. But keeping people excited and letting them know what we're working on has always been a strategy since day one. Creating a launch calendar is super important. So teasers, founder storytelling, educating people on your mission and your USP at the beginning, but just don't put pressure on yourself to be super organised with this. I do think that mix of BTS content with a really nice campaign is going to be exactly what you need. And it's just important to start building a community at the very beginning using platforms such as Instagram and TikTok, building up your email database. At the very beginning, I really wasn't doing email marketing, but I was still making sure I was capturing that email when they come on site. And obviously now email marketing is like 60% of our revenue. So it's huge for us. So I think being intentional with marketing at the very beginning, even when you don't really know what you're doing, I think is really important. Okay, final tip is don't rush. I feel like every month spent planning saves you like 6 months of problem solving. And that is something that I have experienced so much. So I think taking your time in planning is so important, and asking yourself at every single stage of this plan, does this relate back to your mission? Because in 2025, you cannot start a brand just to start a business. If you are just in this to see revenue and to make sales, your customer is going to feel that, and your product's also going to feel that. So I think it's really important to just at every stage ask yourself, does this support your mission? Because as I said, it's very easy to get really excited and miss that. Sometimes it's not even that you want like to see all this revenue. It's just that you're excited that you've completed this and it's something new that you've learned. But always asking yourself, does this relate to your mission, is very important. And then just understanding that at this stage, you don't need a huge team. You don't need a huge investment to start. It is just you, but it's important to just have clarity and purpose. So that is my 101 on how to launch a brand. I can appreciate that was a lot of information, and I feel like there's definitely room to do another solo ep on manufacturing. But if there's anything else I mentioned, please put in the comments below. We're going to put this whole plan down there. But as I mentioned, feels like a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but we would be more than happy to go into further detail. So if you are a founder or someone who is thinking of launching a brand, we would love to hear from you. So please comment on Spotify or YouTube. We'd love to see some of the questions you have, some of the dilemmas you're having at the moment. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode.